Here are 11 of the most insane international laws. Number 11. UAE. No kissing. Displays of public affection, whether you're married or not, can land you in some trouble in Dubai. In the UAE, there's a code of conduct published by the Executive Council Government of Dubai, which clearly specifies what's considered acceptable behavior. The code says that displays of affection between couples do not fit local customs. For married couples, holding hands is okay, but kissing or petting is considered offensive. Public displays of affection, as well as verbal harassment, such as catcalling, are offenses liable to punishment of imprisonment or deportation. Number 10. Singapore. No gum and no smoking. In Singapore, it's illegal to smoke cigarettes in public places or in cars. The laws against smoking were put in place to ensure a clean and healthy environment for the public and protect people from secondhand smoke. Although it's not illegal to buy cigarettes or smoke in your own home, it is illegal to smoke in public, and it's considered a pretty big smuggling-related offense to enter the country with cigarettes. Gum in Singapore is tricky. Chewing gum is okay. Chewing gum on a train is not. Taking gum into the country, however, is a smuggling offense, and you could face a fine of $100,000 or 2 years in jail. Singapore also has laws against not flushing the toilet, feeding pigeons in public, and logging into your neighbor's Wi-Fi. These all rack up fines between $500 and $10,000. Oh, and one last one for Singapore before we move on. Walking around naked in your own house can lead to charges of pornography, and you can be fined up to $1,000. Number 9. Pee before 10 p.m. After 10 p.m., technically, a Swiss man must sit down to urinate. Or to be more precise, he's forbidden by law to stand up while relieving himself inside the 4 walls of his apartment building. How'd this law come to be? This is a strange one, but it makes sense, sort of, and it has to do mostly with noise. See, back in the day, your neighbor pretty much had to listen to everything you did. And we mean everything. Apartments were small and insulation was basically non-existent, so to help control the levels of noise, flushing also falls into this category, by the way, the Swiss Homeowners Society has the right to forbid flushing or standing male urination after 10 p.m. I personally would be much more worried about other noises myself, but then again, that's just me. Modern construction and plumbing have made these laws pretty much obsolete, but technically, it's still legal to enforce these laws. Number 8. Scotland. Legal murder. Ever wanted to commit the perfect murder? Or at least get away with it? Well, if you can convince a Scottish person to carry a bow and arrow and come with you to York, it would be legal to kill him. Yes, murdering a Scotsman in the city of York is legal on 2 conditions. It must be within the ancient city walls, and the Scot must be carrying a bow and arrow. This is clearly a very old law, and there have been many calls for it to be scrapped, but as of December 2016, it still stands. UK law experts also say that it would be unlikely for someone to actually get away with murdering a Scot in York because of the likelihood of a repeal of this crazy law. Number 7. USA. No God, no public office. Maryland, Mississippi, North Carolina, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas. In all of these 7 states, it's illegal for an atheist to hold public office. Most of these states' constitutions say that a non-believer is unfit to hold office. The same goes for jurors and witnesses. Mississippi's constitution says no person who denies the existence of a supreme being shall hold any office in this state. North Carolina says the following person shall be disqualified for office. First, any person who shall deny the being of Almighty God. With an increasing amount of Americans considering themselves atheists, the problem of these laws is self-evident. With 22.8% of Americans being religiously unaffiliated and 3.1% identifying as atheists, it's really difficult to argue for a law that prohibits such a large segment of the American people from having a part in public life. Most atheist politicians would probably just lie and claim a belief in God for the sake of ritual. An increasing amount of atheists, however, find the laws unconstitutional and bigoted and don't want to have to lie or mislead in order to take office. Even if the law isn't easily enforceable, many atheists, and non-atheists as well, I'm sure, feel that it should be repealed. Number 6. Philippines. Unjust vexation. Yes, the Philippines law against unjust vexation is exactly what it sounds like. It's illegal to be annoying. If the offenders act cause annoyance, irritation, torment, distress, or disturbance to the mind of the person to whom it was directed, that person can be charged with unjust vexation. The penalty for unjust vexation is up to 30 days in prison or a fine of up to 200 Philippine pesos, which is about $4 US. The law has been criticized for serving as a catch-all type of legislation that's opportunistically used by people with financial means to smear their enemies for petty reasons. Number 5, USA, your fish better be sober. If you Google crazy laws, one of the first that will always come up is that it is illegal to get a fish drunk in Ohio. While this isn't a straight-up lie, it's definitely a pretty crazy simplification of a pretty reasonable piece of agricultural legislation. Here's why the law came to be. There is a law in Ohio prohibiting agricultural runoff into rivers and other water sources. The runoff pollutes the waterways and poisons the fish. Sometimes, but not always, the agricultural runoff has alcohol in it, especially if it came from grain silos, which might contain fermented materials. Possibly, the fish who happen to be poisoned by the runoff are also intoxicated before they are killed. A couple of years ago, a number of British media outlets, including the BBC, reported on the drunk fish law myth, and since then it has become an internet sensation. This crazy law is definitely not an outright lie, but definitely a twisted, funnier version of a pretty reasonable law that does, sort of, involve drunk fish. Number 4, England. Don't die in Parliament. It's illegal to die in the UK Parliament, which is comparable to Congress in the US. The reason for this pretty absurd law has to do with money and royal duties. Any person who dies in Parliament is entitled to a state funeral. A British state funeral is a very grand and very costly affair. That's pretty much why they would politely ask you to please avoid dying until you've exited the building. Obviously, a dead man couldn't be in any more trouble, so the law is pretty useless and impossible to enact. The 1887 Coroners Act, reenacted by the 1988 Coroners Act, created a separate coroner of the Queen's household. It's the specific coroner's job to look into the death of anyone whose body is lying within the limits of the Queen's palaces or within the limits of any other house where Her Majesty is then residing. Since Parliament still counts as a royal palace, the death of a member of Parliament would, in theory, require members of the royal household to sit as the coroner's jury. So basically, the royal family would have to watch the coroner perform his duty of determining the cause of death. As this would have raised all sorts of questions of parliamentary privilege, the polite convention arose that no parliamentarian dies until they are safely in the ambulance to a hospital. Number 3, UAE, no sex out of wedlock. On November 17, 2016, The Guardian reported on a story of a British woman who faced legal prosecution after reporting a rape. She reported the rape and was immediately arrested and had her passport confiscated. This is all due to the UAE laws prohibiting extramarital sex. Sex outside marriage is a crime in the UAE, so if someone reports being raped, it is immediately considered extramarital sex until the rape is proven. But that requires a court case, which means money and time. So until that happens, you are considered a suspect in a case of voluntary extramarital sex. The extramarital sex laws are very serious in the UAE. In 2009, a South African woman named Roxanne Hillier was arrested and charged for being alone in the same room as her employer at the time. Her home was flooded and she was staying with her employer for the night. The place was raided while she was asleep and she was arrested. She had to undergo involuntary invasive tests to determine whether or not she had sex with her boss. When it was established that she did not sleep with him, she was still jailed and tried for being in the same room with him while not being married to him. Number 2, no bikinis in Qatar. Although there is no Qatari law that specifically forbids anyone to wear a bikini, there are some very strict guidelines as to what constitutes decent clothing. Wearing a bikini just happens to violate every single one of those guidelines, and being indecently dressed could land you in some trouble. Women in Qatar, including tourists, are encouraged to cover their shoulders, knees, and midsections. A typical Western bikini would obviously fail at covering any of that, but they can wear it on the beach apparently, but just not anywhere else. The dress code laws are enforced by an official government body, but many locals feel that enforcement of decency laws are not strict enough. In 2012, a local NGO actually organized a campaign to promote decent dress by reminding foreigners that in Qatar, you are expected to respect the Qatari dress code and that failure to do so can lead to punishment. The penal code applies to anyone who lives in the state or enters its territory. While most of these laws are aimed at women, men aren't totally free to dress how they like either. Male tourists visiting Qatar are also encouraged to dress appropriately. Foreign men are strongly advised against wearing shorts or sleeveless shirts. Number 1. Bahrain. Doing the job with a mirror. It's quite extensively reported that it apparently is illegal for a male gynecologist in Bahrain to look directly at the vajayjay of his patients. This is, of course, because of the strict religious customs of the region. The problem is that this law is very difficult to confirm. The British Telegraph has reported on it as recently as December 15, 2016. That, however, does not necessarily mean it's true. It for sure seems very impractical and possibly even dangerous for a doctor to have to do everything from a mere image. That and the fact that it would make for some crazy cramps for the doctor. Some of the laws on this list, however, make it seem that anything is possible. If anyone from Bahrain that can confirm or deny this claim, go ahead and help us out. Let us know in the comments. Here's what's next.